What thus the simultaneous withdrawal of the United States and Israeli negotiators from Gaza talks signify about the future of Middle East diplomacy. The breakdown in ceasefire negotiations this week, marked by both countries pulling their delegations from Qatar, highlights deepening frustration with Hamas and growing uncertainty around any imminent resolution to the war in Gaza. Well, as we delve into the details, this and many more will be explored in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Tabitha Akro. Let's begin. The United States and Israel have withdrawn their negotiation teams from the Gaza ceasefire talks in Qatar, citing a lack of progress and cooperation from Hamas. The White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff announced that the U.S. decision late Thursday says the Hamas response indicated little interest in reaching a ceasefire agreement. The United States delegation is returning home from consultations. Let's take a listen.
New term sheet that hopefully will be delivered later on today. The president is going to review it, and I have some very good feelings about getting to a long-term resolution, temporary ceasefire, and a long-term resolution, a peaceful resolution. I think that we are on the precipice of sending out a new term sheet that hopefully will be delivered later on today. The president is going to review it, and I have some very good feelings about getting to a long-term resolution, temporary ceasefire, and a long-term resolution, a peaceful resolution.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu echoed a similar stance, reaffirming Israel's openness to a deal but warning against misinterpretation of that willingness as weakness. Speaking at a state memorial for Ze'ev Jabotinsky, an influential figure in Israeli right-wing ideology, Netanyahu emphasized that any perception of Israeli compromise as a sign of defeat would be misguided. Let's take a listen.
If a person does not give you much, no one gives you instructions regarding assistance.
If you need to sing a song to inspire that he is a doctor, without asking where to, he said, do not give movement. Condemnation of us, we do not receive at all. Pays a much higher attacker than me. You are against us, and then we do not want here. And the child tweets to the houses about the nations.
Gabriel the runaway. The correct one is right. If there is any Gabrielitsky in his field of notes.
Moving forward, in response to recent development, Netanyahu's office also recalled its negotiators from Qatar, stating only that it appreciated the efforts of mediators, including with Gulf, Qatar, and Egypt. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to draw international concern. Restrictions on aid deliveries imposed by Israel have severely limited access to food and medical supplies. We see that on Wednesday, the World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom warned of man-made mass starvation in the territory. The United Nations and other humanitarian agencies have also echoed similar fears, with Gaza's health ministry reporting that 33 Palestinians died from malnutrition within 48 hours during the past week. As pressures mount globally about these issues, the future of ceasefire negotiations remains uncertain, but well, the coming days will still justify the end with the ceasefire talks. Now, moving over to Thailand, there's been a devastating situation over there. Armed clashes between Thailand and Cambodia intensified on Friday as both nations exchanged heavy artillery for a second consecutive day, marking the deadliest outbreak of violence between the two Southeast Asian neighbors in over a decade. The confrontation has left at least 16 people dead, most of them civilians, and displaced more than 130,000 individuals. The border dispute, long simmering due to unresolved territorial claims, has now escalated into a large-scale conflict involving rocket systems, artillery fire, and airstrikes. The fighting, which began early Thursday, has rapidly spread across multiple locations along the disputed frontier, now affecting 12 sites, double the number reported on the first day. And despite growing international concern, including calls for a ceasefire from the United States and ASEAN leadership, diplomatic efforts have stalled. Thailand has rejected third-party mediation, asserting its preference for bilateral negotiations. Thailand, on the other hand, alleges that Cambodian forces are deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure, including schools and hospitals, using Russian-made BM-21 rocket launchers. Cambodia, on the other hand, also accuses Thailand of deploying cluster munitions, an internationally condemned weapon that is banned by more than 100 countries, though Thailand is not a signatory to that ban. Now, what are observers saying? Observers have noted that this intensifying rhetoric is paralleled by a significant military buildup. Reuters correspondents in Syrian province witnessed convoys of Thai military vehicles, including tanks and artillery units, moving towards the front lines. Right there on your screen. Explosions echoed across the border zone, and military personnel were seen loading and firing artillery shells amid orange flashes and billowing smoke. The conflict has already prompted Thailand to mobilize an F-16 fighter jet in a rare combat operation targeting Cambodian military positions. These airstrikes underscores Thailand's technological and strategic advantage as Cambodia lacks comparable air capabilities. Now, the Thai Health Ministry confirmed also that 15 of the 16 fatalities reported so far were civilians. Disheartening. Another 46 people have been wounded, including 15 soldiers. Evacuation centers in Thailand's Syrian province are now overwhelmed, with tens of thousands seeking refuge from the bombardment. Cambodian casualty figures remain unclear, though a provincial official in Odar Mincheo acknowledged at least one death, 5 injuries, and evacuation of over 1,500 families. Right there on your screen, the emotional scenes from evacuation shelters, displaced civilians recounted their harrowing experiences. We heard very loud explosions. We were so scared, one elderly resident said, expressing despair over the forced displacement and loss of safety. We see that this renewed violence between Thailand and Cambodia was triggered by Thailand's recall of its ambassador from Phnom Penh and the expulsion of Cambodia's envoy earlier in the week. That move followed an incident in which a Thai soldier lost a limb to a landmine allegedly planted by Cambodian forces, a claim Phnom Penh denies. Thailand's rejection of mediation offers from the United States, China, and Malaysia raises further questions. Can Asia play an effective role in regional security when its leading members reject multilateral diplomacy? And what mechanism exists to prevent further escalation in an already volatile region? The chair of ASEAN, Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, said he had spoken with both governments and noted signs of willingness to engage in dialogue. However, with each country entrenched in its narrative and unwilling to concede, prospects for immediate peace remains very slim. Now, moving down, we see that the Thailand-Cambodian conflict raises broader concerns about militarization in Southeast Asia and the vulnerability of disputed borders to sudden escalations. It also brings to light questions about the effectiveness of international law in preventing the use of banned munitions and also protecting civilian lives during armed conflict. As the crisis continues, the world watches closely, hoping that the push for diplomacy does not come late and not at a stake. Now, moving over to the European Union and China, who held a high-stakes summit recently between the European Union leaders and Chinese President Xi Jinping, which concluded in Beijing on Thursday, amid rising geopolitical and economic tensions. The talks were dominated by sharp disagreement on trade imbalances, the war in Ukraine, and access to critical raw materials such as rare earth elements. European Council President Antonio Costa and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen led the EU delegation, while both sides emphasized the importance of cooperation. Underlying friction was evident throughout the discussions. Let's take a listen.
Stand up for Ukraine's future. Europe must show strength. Or when we go to China to defend our interests, Europe must show strength. And this strength only comes through our unity.
A change is needed, but then at the summit, Beijing pushed back against European calls to reduce trade distortions and address overcapacity in sectors such as electric vehicles and green technology. China, meanwhile, expressed concern over what it views as growing protectionism in the EU. Now, on Ukraine matters, European leaders reiterated their demand for China to take a firmer stance against Russia's invasion. However, Beijing maintained its neutral position and called for dialogue and restraint from all parties. Also, the European Union also raised alarm over China's control of the global supply chain for rare earth materials, vital for green energy and high-tech manufacturing. This comes amid broader concerns in Brussels about dependencies that could be exploited during future crises. Now, despite the tense atmosphere, both parties agreed to maintain communication and avoid further deterioration in ties. However, the outcomes of the summit offered little in terms of tangible breakthroughs. The meeting underscored a widening gap between the world's second largest economy and its largest trading bloc, raising questions about the future of EU-China relations in an increasingly polarized global order. Now, still on this, we got a report that trended within the week, last week, and to this very moment, and it's been a developing story. Today, two top executives at tech firm Astronoma have stepped down following the circulation of a viral video showing them embracing at a Coldplay concert in Boston. Christine Cabot, the company's former chief people officer, resigned just days after CEO Andy Byron also exited his role. The pair were identified in a widely shared clip captured during a kiss cam moment where they appeared startled and turned away from the screen. The moment drew attention online, followed by a light-hearted comment from Coldplay frontman Chris Martin during the performance. The incident quickly spread across social media platforms, prompting speculation and scrutiny. Let's take a look.
Yeah. Oh, look at these two. All right, come on. You're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy. Yeah. Oh, look at these two. All right, come on. You're okay? Oh, what? Either they're having an affair or they're just very shy. I'm not quite sure.
Now, in response to the resignations, AstroNeoma released a statement reaffirming its commitment to professional conduct, stating that a recent event did not reflect the company's values or expectations for leadership. The company also clarified that no other employees were involved in the footage, countering misinformation circulating online. Interim CEO Pet DeJoy acknowledged the unusual attention the firm has received, describing the past few days as surreal in a LinkedIn post. He noted that while the exposure was unintended, it has nonetheless brought public awareness to the company. The viral video has also sparked a wider conversation about public appearances at events and the growing influence of social media in corporate accountability. As this report unfolds, we hope that the coming days will bring definite response to the questions going on in people's mind and people's marriages. Now, moving over to a drastic incident that happened in Russia. A Soviet-era Antonov and 24 aircraft crashed in Russia's Far East on Thursday while attempting to land, killing all 48 people on board. The incident has raised fresh concerns about the continued use of aging planes in remote regions of the country. The aircraft, operated by the regional airline Angara, vanished from radar during a second landing attempt near Tindar in the Amur region. A search helicopter later located a burning wreckage in a dense, hilly forest about 15 kilometers from the airport. Among the 42 passengers were 5 children. The remaining 6 were crew members. The crash occurred despite the plane having recently passed a technical safety inspection. Originally manufactured in 1976, the An-24 was nearly 50 years old. Its age, combined with past minor incidents and the region's harsh flying conditions, is expected to intensify scrutiny of Russia's reliance on outdated aircraft. Authorities have also launched a criminal investigation into suspected violations of air transport regulations, while the immediate cause of the crash remains under review. Analysts point to systemic maintenance challenges exacerbated by international sanctions, which have restricted Russia's access to aircraft parts and foreign technical support. The An-24, once widely used across the Soviet Union, has a mixed safety record. Of the approximately 1,340 units built, 88 have been destroyed in crashes and 65 involved in serious non-fatal incidents. Currently, only 75 remain in operation globally, including in countries like North Korea, Kazakhstan, and Ethiopia. Footage from the crash site revealed smoke rising from the forested impact zone, inaccessible by road and reached only after rescue teams cleared a path with heavy machinery. Recovery efforts were further hampered by the rugged terrain. Now, what is President Vladimir Putin saying? President Vladimir Putin and regional officials have expressed their condolences, and Moscow has formed a special commission to oversee the response and investigation. Nicknamed flying tractors and 224s have long served Russia's far-flung regions due to their ability to land on unpaved surfaces and endure extreme cold. However, the crash may accelerate discussions on phasing out such aircraft. A proposed replacement, the Ladoga, is not expected to enter mass production before 2027. Meanwhile, the tragedy also revives questions posed in 2011 when the then President Dmitry Medvedev called for grounding the An-24 fleet after a fatal accident in Siberia. Despite such warnings, many airlines continue operating these aircraft, citing reliability and cost effectiveness. As global aviation standards evolve and sanctions persist, can Russia afford to keep flying aircraft designed more than 5 decades ago? The answer may lie in the findings of the current investigation and the political will to prioritize passenger safety over regional connectivity. Well, as this story develops, this is what we'll be drawing the curtain on today's flash news. Stay tuned for Horizon at the top of the hour, 4 p.m.